access token is that once you're trying to authenticate anything with GitHub, so cloning, pushing, pulling from a repository, you can do it all with an SSH key. It's easier because you don't have to remember some personal access token, and you can just revoke the keys as easy as possible. But as well as you can reuse these SSH keys for other things, like authenticating to other servers that aren't GitHub servers. So I just got a, can you pull up my screen? All right. So I got a terminal up here. And so, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and set up an SSH key. Before I do get started with that, SSH keys, you can set them up with hardware keys, such as the one I'm kind of holding in my hand right now. It's kind of small. It's a YubiKey. But the advantage there as well is that if you set it up with a hardware key, instead of setting up some passphrase for the SSH key as the only protection, is you can protect it with a hardware key, which means you need physical access in order to use the SSH key, which increases your security. So when you're going to generate an SSH key, I can find my mouse. Oh, there we go. So when you go on generate your SSH key, it's pretty simple. So first thing you can do is check whether you have any keys generated. If you've never done this before, there's a good likelihood that you don't have anything generated. But if you're LS on a hidden SH directory, you might not have any files, or you might have a file called known hosts. Don't worry too much about that. So first one's asking me to do, this is, you have to do if you're on a Mac specifically. But if you are on a Mac, you can quickly create a config file. And later on, you can add other stuff to this one. But if you're on Mac, you need to add a host for GitHub. Actually, last one I will omit for now. All right. Regardless you're on Mac or on Windows or Linux, next following commands kind of work the same. So you'll do SSH keygen, and then you'll give it a type of key that you want. So normally if you are on a recent machine, you should be able to use the ED255. So ED25519. If for some reason that one isn't supported, you can always use RSA, and that works just fine. If you have a hardware key like I am, you can add a -SK and generate a key. I guess this laptop doesn't support that, so I won't be using a hardware key. As well as you'll want to usually put your email as well. So whatever email you have associated with GitHub, you can go ahead and put that right in. And I mistyped something, so now I gotta quit the whole setup. Yeah, that's fine. So generate a new one. For the location, you can usually leave it on default, but you can put it in a different location if you so please. But if you are gonna give it a different name, I still suggest you put it in that .sh folder. So enter a passphrase. Again, that's up to you whether you want to put a passphrase or not. If you don't put one, it is usually much faster and easier to use. But I wouldn't recommend not putting one. So it's kind of a do as I say, not as I do sort of situation. Cool. So we got our SSH key set up. So now this exists on the machine itself, but the GitHub server still doesn't have that on file. So if we try to use it, it won't work. So all we need to do here is take the public key that we have, we upload it to the GitHub servers, and then once we use our key in the future, it'll recognize it and then it'll authenticate us. So the way I do that is you can quickly just cat it out. So if I cat out from SSH, that's what I didn't want to do. There we go. So there's going to be two files. there's going to be the one blank and then the same thing, .pub. You'll want to copy the .pub. That's your public key. If I printed out the other one, that would have been my private key. I'll take all that and copy that. Although on a Mac, I don't know how to copy. Camera, how do I copy on a Mac? Command C? Man, it works much better on Linux. Command C? It's not doing anything. How do I select the text? Oh, there we go. Oh. There we go. You know what? That's enough things copied. I'll be able to figure out the rest. Command C, right? All right, that better work. All right, so now if I go back into my GitHub, I go here, I go into my settings, right here. Settings, you'll go into SSH and GPG keys, and you'll see I already have a couple set up, but you'll click on new SSH key, give some sort of title, and then you will paste that in. So in this case, I know it had ED25519. Paste in the rest. ED25519. All right, if I did copy paste that correctly, it should work. I guess we'll find out. All right, so I've added the SSH key. Now I could go ahead and test it. If I do a quick SSH test, GitHub at github.com. Boom. So if I get this little message, it means I configured everything correctly. I'll be able to use my SSH key. So I do have a repository set up already for myself that I can kind of test it out with. Oh, there we go. All right, so in this one, you can see that I have two options, either SSH or SSH. Sorry, HTTPS or SSH. I'll copy the SSH link. And now I'm able to clone that repository. And boom, I've created one. It's an empty repository, that's fine. And now I can even CD into it, right? Boom, so now I was able to clone my repository using SSH versus HTTPS. Now, anytime I try to use that SSH key again, if there's a password, it'll prompt you for the password, but there are ways you can set up so once you type the password the first time, it doesn't re-prompt you for the next 5 minutes. Or if you have it set up with a hardware key, whenever you use it, the hardware key will prompt you to tap it. All right, so that's pretty simple, how to set up an SSH key. Next one is how to set up a GPG key. So normally when I would have the slides here, I'd kind of show you the example of why you might want to set up a GPG key. But basically, whenever you did the initial setup for your GitHub, not for your GitHub, but for Git on your local machine, it might have yelled at you, told you, I don't know who you are, so you had to do git config, username, and then you put in your GitHub username, and you put user email, and you put in your GitHub user email. So Git kind of just trusts that that identity is yours. There's no actual authentication there, right? So anytime you make a commit, the commit will record that username and that email as part of the git commit message as a whole. It'll also take the actual message and the timestamp. But it just kind of trusts that that is you, right? So when you push it to GitHub, GitHub will then kind of correlate, oh, this new git commit is here. It's going to check the email associated to that git commit, and then it'll just pull up whatever GitHub user has that email associated to them, and that's the kind of the profile picture it will display, right? But you could put in somebody's email that isn't yours, and if that user exists on GitHub, it'll show up as them making that commit, even though they never did that, right? So there's a kind of famous one going around for a kind of shitpost repo where somebody put Linus Torvalds' email, and then they made a bunch of commits, and then all of a sudden it sounds like Linus Torvald, the creator of Linux, is typing ooh into GitHub, right? So the way you kind of prevent this from happening is you sign all your commits. So using a cryptographic proof, you can prove that, hey, this commit, it's signed by me, and then the other people can look, okay, whose signature is this? Does this actually match to the person who claims the signature is from, right? And so by doing that, you can kind of prove that, hey, any commit that has this signature, that has one of my signatures, that's me, I made the commit. That's kind of the thinking behind there. So go ahead and create a GPG key, right? So again, with the GPG key, you can also set this up with a hardware key, for example, so you can never sign a commit without also using your hardware key. It's up to you whether you want to do that or not, though. So all you got to do is, if you have GPG installed, which on macOS, I believe it is by default, on most Linux machines is by default, and if you're on Windows, you will have to install that. Oh no, command not found, GPG. Oh, that sucks. I guess macOS doesn't have GPG installed. So that kind of complicates that. Cameron, does this machine have Homebrew? Command not found Homebrew. All right, that sucks. Let's see if I can. No, it's probably not worth the worth. Say again? Brew install? Well, they yell at me, so. Oh, there we go. All right, well, that's might take a while. So, yeah, so the thing here, though, is that once I set up this key, again, you have your private, your public key, right? I'll take the public key, I'll give that to GitHub, and then anytime I make any future commits, I sign them with that GPG key. It'll then, GitHub will look at the public one and be like, hey, you have this public one on file for this person? Oh, it is? Cool, and it's going to give you a little green tick besides your commit message, and it kind of shows that, hey, it is actually made by this person. Man, the update is taking a while. All right. I don't know if I can move something else while that happens. Yeah, screw it. I guess I'll do something else while that happens. All right, so while that's happening, kind of go over a couple GitHub things you might want to use for the hackathon. So issues and pull requests are very, very useful things. So if you have some kind of ticket, right, and other things like Jira or whatnot, you can just do this directly on GitHub, right? So if you want a teammate to work on something, you can just go ahead and create an issue, give a title and description, and then at the side here, you can assign this to somebody, right? So I can choose to assign this to Cameron at the back here, creating the issue. And when you create these issues, they're tied to the repository that you're working on, which is useful for organization. So I can set to install GPG by default on all machines. And then I put some description here, right? Create my issue, and now it's created, and it's already assigned to a person, right? Because I chose who to assign it to. Another useful one, pull requests. So you can do a git merge, git rebase all directly on the terminal. But the way that's kind of recommended where you're working on big projects is that you protect your branch, which I can show you in a second. And then in order to actually merge into the main or your master branch, all you gotta do is create a pull request. The advantage there is that, well, one, there's one less terminal command you gotta type. But the big advantage there is that other people have the chance to view your code before having it merged into your main branch, right? So you can kind of make sure that it's actually up to your code quality standards, that it's passing unit tests, any other stuff like that. You can make sure that there are reviews that happen before it ever gets merged into your main branch. So if you go into your settings for that, and you go into your rules, there we go, rule set. You can create a new rule set and click a new branch rule set. And there's like a lot of options you can put here, right? So protect main. And then kind of gets complicated, all the stuff you can do, but used to be an easier menu for this. Yeah, they keep changing the UI all the time. All right, so target branch, you click on target. You can include the default branch, which in that case should be either your main or master, whatever branch name you're using. And then you can restrict updates, for example, so people can't push directly to it, right? And you can even block force push. So the idea there is that your main branch is going to be more strictly enforced at all times. So anything ideally on your main branch is fully working code that everybody has reviewed and kind of give it the thumbs up. And so if you have CI set up to pull from that main branch, you know that you're never, at least accidentally, pushing bugs to production. It's still updating. All right. Looks like it's going at least. All right, so that's that. Actions. That one, don't have time to go over kind of super detail for any of these, but nice thing about GitHub Actions is that they're essentially kind of like Travis CI or Woodpecker, but integrated directly with GitHub, right? So any CI, CD pipelines, you can set these up directly on GitHub. There's a lot of kind of GitHub Actions, like pre-made YAML files already that exist out there. And a lot of these you can kind of just click configure, and it'll kind of give you a blank YAML that you kind of just got to fill a couple details in. But advantage here is, again, any CI/CD. So testing unit tests, for example, or pushing stuff kind of to deployment, all these things can happen automatically. All right, cool. So GPG finished installing. So again, to create your GPG key, you type GPG and then full generate key. I'll ask you which type. You can usually just get away with RSA and RSA. Oh, one. A lot of these you can kind of leave the default. You can set an expiration date. So I'm lazy. I don't feel like kind of renewing my GPG key all the time. So I just kind of set to no expiration date, and if something happens in the future, I can just go ahead and revoke it after the fact. So here you'll type your real name. So I'll type in mine. The email address, put in the one associated with your GitHub. And then you can put in a comment if you want, it doesn't really matter. Click OK. So it strongly recommends that you put in a passphrase. So I would recommend that too. I'm not going to for the sake of the workshop. Maybe it's forcing me now. All right, I guess I'll put in something. Password 123. Cool, so now I got a GPG key. So now I'm going to list all the secret keys that I have. Ooh. There we go. So under sec, you have your RSA, and then however bits long you had it. You're going to select the thing coming after your slash. You'll want to copy that. And then typing GPG armor. You'll export that key. And then all that you select. There we go. It's much easier now. So you have to go back into your settings and then back into the SSH section of the settings. There we go. So you had SSH keys at the top. You got to scroll to the bottom here. GPG keys. Select new GPG key. And then again, give something descriptive. Just put workshop. Paste in that. Oh, paste in that public key, add GPG key. And now, the other thing you're supposed to do is, if you still have that other one copied, the ID, you can set it up in your configs so it automatically pulls that key, and that's what it uses to sign. Otherwise, if you don't know how to set up, anytime you make a commit, you can give it $S, and that'll tell it to sign. But usually, once you have the key, you always want to use it, so I just recommend going into your config file and just kind of editing it there. So in this case, I'll just edit it for the config that I have here in the hidden Git folder. Then I forget where, actually. But yeah, you can set up the SSH key in that file. There we go. So what you type in is git config. You can decide to edit global or not. I'm not going to edit the global. I'm just going to let it edit my local. GPG format SSH. And then the path to the key, which would be user signing key. And then the path to your public key. Oh, there we go. Boom, set up the GPG key. So now whenever I try to sign in the future, it'll just pull in that key, and if there's a passphrase associated, you just got to type in the passphrase, and boom, you sign all your future Git commits. And the last thing I just want to finish off with is that if you do have that set up, you can go in, forget what setting. There you go. You can put on vigilant mode. So what vigilant mode would do is any of the commits you have in the future, or even the ones you already have in the past, if they aren't signed, it'll put like kind of a red X beside it, so people are more aware that it wasn't signed. But if you do have it signed, it'll kind of show up kind of a little bit nicer. I don't think I have any repositories off the top of my head where I do have things signed to kind of show you the difference. But actually, no, I kind of could actually. But using that portal one. There we go. So a couple of these would show. Yeah, so anything that says verified is because it was verified with a GPG key. And then you have a couple here that will show up as unverified now. Because it wasn't signed, right? And that only shows up for my profile because I set vigilant mode, right? So you might decide whether that is for you or not. But yeah, I guess that'll kind of conclude a kind of advanced tips on Git and GitHub. So again, take advantage of the tools that GitHub has. So the issues, the pull requests, the GitHub actions, and then kind of for your own personal use, highly recommend the SSH keys, GPG keys. You can kind of decide whether that's for you or not, but SSH kind of works for everybody. Thank you.